Hi there, and welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm Greedy Calais in the CapeCod.com News Center, and I'm joined by two guests from the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance. Do you mind just introducing yourself for our listeners?
My name is Aubrey Church, and I'm the Policy Director at the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance, which is located in Chatham, Mass.
All right, awesome. And Mark, yourself?
Yeah, my name's Mark Leach. I've been a commercial fisherman, both cod and lobster, since 1975. So coming on close to 50 years of commercial fishing, and actually was involved with the original formation of the Cape Cod Alliance, which was originally, we called ourselves the Cape Cod Commercial Hook Fishermen's Association, and when we morphed into the Alliance, included all those small boats of Cape Cod, basically.
We wanted to talk about a lot of different topics today. I was hoping to touch on everything from how latest regulation changes through NOAA fisheries, things aimed at protecting North Atlantic right whales might be affecting you guys or not affecting you guys, what the impact is in general, as well as a couple of other things about what it's just like being a fisherman nowadays in the Cape and Islands region. But before we get going, Aubrey, do you mind just giving us a quick overview of what it is you guys do for the local community?
Sure, absolutely. So the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance was formed in 1991, and it really started from a need and crisis with the commercial fishing industry. Many of the small boat day fishermen were really concerned that there was threats of fish depletion and that the fishing regulations that they were seeing was really not aligning with what they were witnessing on the water. And so since 1991, we've really worked to support commercial fishermen and make sure that their voices are being heard at the decision-making tables. We work toward a healthy ocean environment and promoting sustainable fishing practices. We want to support the small boat independent fleet by making sure that they have a voice at the local, state, and federal level. So I go to various regulatory meetings as well as encourage fishermen to attend. We also really believe in fisherman-driven science and research that will inform effective and sound policy decisions as well as fishing regulations. And then we really want to connect the community to commercial fishermen. We want to educate consumers on the history of the fishing industry, the current challenges that they are facing, and how to really make that connection between the seafood that they buy at the market and the fishermen who are providing for the communities here on Cape Cod.
So we wanted to mainly have this conversation today, talk more about how regulations meant to protect North Atlantic right whales and other marine species are impacting local fishermen. Things from voluntary speed restrictions as well as zones where people are no longer allowed to do lobster fishing and also remote gear. Either Aubrey or Mark, do you mind giving a general overview of what the response has been from you guys?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So just to kind of give a little bit of background, then I'll field it to Mark. So there's something called the Atlantic Large Whale Take Reduction Plan, and that was first implemented in 1997 with the goals of protecting large whales. And it's been modified a few times since, in 2000, 2007, 14, 15, 2021. It's been a few different years, different restrictions. But something new that they're doing in Massachusetts is a proposed rule to add a new wedge, they call it. So it's to the mass restricted area. But really what it does is provides a seasonal closure for lobster pot fishing from February 1st to April 30th. So this means that lobstermen are not allowed to fish in that area with in the hopes that these vertical lines in the water are removed so that there's no chance of risk of entanglement to right whales. But something I'd really like to stress to the listeners here is that lobstermen have always been stewards of the resource, care deeply about the ocean environment and whale. And for many years, prior to even, the concerns with North Atlantic right whales, they've been doing various protections, such as marking their buoy and vertical lines, adding what they call weak inserts, so that reduces the strength of the line, so that if a whale were to be entangled, it would break free. They are required to have a certain number of traps per string of gear, so that they now require a minimum number of traps per trawl. They can't have any floating buoy lines that could then increase risk of entanglement. They're not allowed to wet storage their gear. So what that means is every 30 days, they are required to remove the gear out of the water. They usually do it much sooner than that, but there's no gear just sitting out there for eternity. And they're also required to have slow zones, so the speed at which the vessel is steaming to and from fishing grounds to protect whales. And then, of course, they have to abide by these seasonal closures at times of year where these whales are in the area. And so I just touch on those points, but I'll let Mark kind of talk from the ground of how his experience has been with that.
Yeah, Aubrey pretty much hit all the requirements that we're currently adhering to, and they have been quite effective, I would say, in reducing number of entanglements to a very minimal number in the U.S. waters, especially, and especially in the Cape waters, and what I fish in what is called the Outer Cape area, which is basically from Provincetown down to Nantucket, out east to the shipping lanes, which run north and south from Boston. You come around the tip of the Cape, you pick up there's a shipping lane out there. Our area goes to the eastern edge of that shipping lane, and there's been virtually no entanglements from any of the fishermen in those areas in years. So it has had good effects. It's definitely more of a learning curve for us than a real problem. I'm actually knowing that you're solving a problem is always good, and actually there's been a few benefits from using the new gear that we have, but more specifically, we've been forced or mandated to use sinking ground line, and that's the line that basically we set our trawl. I set 25 pot trawls myself, and each trap is that. What that means is the traps are set at intervals of 100 feet on what we call a main line, and every 100 feet there's what we call a gangent line, which is about 6 feet long, and the trap is attached to that. So when they made us go to sink line, because what they were finding was loops of polypropylene, which was the line that we used to back when I started fishing in 1975 on an offshore lobster boat out of Harwich. Everybody used polypropylene, and there were entanglements back in those days of many things, basically. But and what happens is if the line will actually float up when the tide's not running, which we call the slack of the tide. That's when the tide is not running. It would put loops up into the water column, and that's where fish, mostly whales, and not so much turtles where we are, but things of that. Any mammals could possibly get tail wrapped into one of those loops. So they made us go sink line. But so, of course, like everything, fishermen tend to go kicking and screaming when it first came around. But I found that, and all the lobstermen have found in the interim, that using sinking ground line has actually been beneficial because it stays tight to the bottom. And when you have stormy weather, you have far less snarls from the storms because the traps are less apt to get floated up by the polypropylene and then all snarled up. So that's been kind of a little unforeseen benefit that we actually found from switching to that, and then the other thing is that was a nice unforeseen benefit that we did get from doing that. Now we're working on doing some things called pop-ups, which are what you probably have heard is ropeless lobster fishing. In other words, we're getting rid of trying to see if we can set up a system that will get rid of vertical buoy lines in the water column, what they call a pop-up buoy line, which is in a cage. And I've been actually working with a couple of groups on different prototypes of it. And what you do is you drive over where your trawl is set, send a radio signal down with an acoustic receiver, and it triggers a switch inside the cage, which opens the door of the cage, and a hard plastic buoy floats the line up. And they call it, their affectionate term for it is lobster on demand. But it puts the line right up to the boat, and then we pick up the line and haul the trawl. So, and we've had some moderate success. There's still a lot of work to be done on that. It's not exactly, by no means, ready for prime time, but it's definitely it shows a lot of promise.
And I just wanted to add that recently the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, or what they call NIFWF, and the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, they announced about $18 million in grants to support the development of innovative fishing gear to reduce the risk of entanglement of North Atlantic right whales. So there was about 18 projects that were funded. And so you definitely can check in with Beth Cassoni from Mass Lobstermen's Association. I know she recently received funding to essentially test a pinger device. So not doing on-demand ropeless, but having location of where the trawls are and then working with fishermen to grapple the gear, essentially haul it to the surface. So there are a variety of different techniques. We have some members who are not testing on-demand ropeless gear. We have others that are. Some are supportive, some are not. I think the big point I want to bring home to anyone listening today is that it's not just going to impact the lobster industry. It's going to impact potentially the gillnet fishing industry if they have to also consider some of these changes in protections for right whale. It's also going to impact the mobile fleet, so the draggers, the scallopers, because we need everyone to be cooperating and working together in order for this to, work successfully, because many of the mobile gear, they rely on looking on the ocean and seeing buoys or high flyers so that they know that the gear is in the area. If you're removing the vertical line in the water, you no longer see that surface marker. And so mobile gear could be going over an area towing and end up grabbing someone else's gear. And so we really want to avoid any safety concerns or loss of gear from the two different gear types, whether it's the fixed gear, lobster pot trap, gillnet, and the mobile gear fleet. It's going to require a lot of coordination. And I think that's where a lot of the fishing industry is concerned still, that there's a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like there's a lot of secondary things that maybe people not fully familiar with the industry might not be even aware of. I was completely unaware that there could be this safety hazard essentially related to not being able to see the lines anymore. Do you think that it's just going to be important for scientists to get together with fishermen like yourselves, other alliance groups, to kind of hash out some of these secondary things that people might not be aware of, the intricacies of the of being a life as a fisherman, essentially?
Well, we've been working. This ropeless thing has been going for this is probably going into the third season right now. I'm just guessing, but we've worked with Woods Hole on this group of scientists in Woods Hole. Henry Milliken's one of them. He's a scientist down in Woods Hole. He's kind of spearheaded this project, and we've worked quite a bit with them and in trying to figure this thing out and try if it's going to work, and what we need to do to make it work more properly and avoid problems which Aubrey just mentioned to you.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that so the Science Center, they have something called a gear library. So it's a collection of on-demand or ropeless systems that are available for fishermen to test. That's just one option, but there are ways that the Science Center is trying to partner with organizations that are fisherman-led, whether it's the Fishermen's Alliance, whether it's Mesa Farm Foundation on the Cape, whether it's Center for Coastal Studies out in PETA. There is a variety of organizations all through the Northeast that they're trying to find ways to work with those organizations, with fishermen who are out there on the water, who are ultimately going to be the ones who need to buy into this product, because they're out there and they can't be slowing down their operations. Time is money out on the water. They want to be effective at what they're doing, but also not be afraid or concerned with any risk to safety on maneuvering new gear that they're not used to. And so it's going to require testing. And I think that's why a lot of funds from NOAA and from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is being allocated to pilot some of these techniques and projects to try to understand the feasibility of whether it could work or not.
So how does it work if I'm a fisherman who's interested in testing out some of this technology or something? They're not going through you guys, are they? It's contacted through Woods Hole or some other organization?
No, basically the Alliance is not really spearheading this thing at all. It's basically spearheaded through Woods Hole and a few other. The Conservation Law Foundation actually just got a big spot, as I understand it, in promoting this. Sure. And they basically have reached out to fishermen that they've known over the years and word of mouth. We get other guys who are interested to try it out. So basically, that's. I would say it was probably came mostly the biggest mover on the thing, which is they have been in a lot of things as Conservation Law Foundation. I think were the ones who really got this thing started.
Yeah, and I think also for many of the fishermen that have been involved in testing it, they're feeling the regulations of closures where they're no longer able to fish in an area that they traditionally used to fish. And so, there are folks in Rhode Island or even in Cape Cod Bay that are, working with folks at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center to get what's called an exempted fishing permit. So it's a research permit that allows them to test this technology in areas where there are closures. And so I think it allows for some fishermen to have the opportunity to work if they would like to. But as Mark mentioned, at the Fishermen's Alliance, we have members that are testing it and are curious, and we have others that are very much against on demand. And so we don't take a stance at the Fishermen's Alliance. We just try to help give information for those that are interested and pass it along.
One of the problems that, like everything, new technology is very expensive, and that's been the biggest, one of the biggest things that keeps fishermen from wanting to get involved in it. The very first units which we tried were, I think each end were estimated cost for the box that sat on the bottom was around $4,000 or $5,000, and the unit in the boat was another $5,000. That's a fixed unit. That's kind of like a one-time expense. But every end, just imagine every end of your trawls. I have 35 trawls in the water when I'm fishing all my gear. That's 70 ends at $5,000. It's $350,000, I believe. So that's a lot of money, and obviously no fisherman's going to be able to fish because this stuff doesn't last. It gets lost just like any type of fishing gear from time to time. It gets hit, and you certainly can't afford to take a $5,000 loss, let alone you can't even afford to buy $350,000 worth of this equipment. So, and that's all, again, comes to because it's new technology, just like the first cell phones, the first anything you can think of, computer or whatever. The first calculator was something like $75 when it first came out and had 4 functions, and now the bank away if you open an account, So, I mean, and it's the same thing going on here. And actually, I'm working with a group out of California, and I was kind of turned off by that big price tag. I said, you got to find a way of doing this cheaper, and you don't need a lot of whistles. All we want to do is be able to drive over the trawl, and the end of the trawl, push a button, and release the cage. So. And this group in California, Subsea Sonics group, has really come around with a unit that's right now projected to be around. Right now, the projected cost is $300 per end per unit, and that's obviously significantly less than the $5,000 unit. It's a very simple system. It works. I mean, it does. We have some work to do on it. I'm not quite, like I said, we're not quite ready for the prime time, but. So at any rate, that's where we're at with that. And,
yeah, that is awesome. I mean, the cost savings right from $4,000 a unit to a possibly $300 unit. I imagine that can make or break a fisherman, especially with risking it all with property on the line out on the water. Do you think that there's a lot of people that might be incredulous now, and all it would take would just to be this cheaper unit, and you think that a lot of people would be good to go? Do you think that's the major hurdle for people?
I mean, right now we still have to get efficiency of the unit actually working on demand every time you go over it, and we're not there yet. But we're getting. So I think, we pretty much hit everything on that. But I mean, that's where that's going. I would say another couple of seasons, at least another full season before we can really even think about introducing that type of mandatory. I don't even know if it's necessary. I think to be honest with you, the end of it is going to be, I think, in order to fish in areas like Aubrey mentioned, the wedge area or areas that are closed, you're going to have to use ropeless gear, and that's where that's going to come into a benefit. And if you're willing to accept draconian closures and still be able to fish and make money, you probably never want to get involved with the ropeless because it's a little bit more intensive. So.
Do potential speed restrictions from NOAA really impact you guys as fishermen?
We're not a high-speed fleet, but to me, my boat's probably as fast as just about anybody's. But it's like 15 knots, and we have to drop down to 10 knots. It's not a game changer by any stretch.
Thank you both so much. I also wanted to chat more about the oxygenation issues that we've been seeing in Cape Cod Bay that is leading to lobster die-off. But before we shift topics, is there anything else either of you wanted to add specifically about the regulation changes or just being a lobsterman in today's climate?
Yeah, I just think that the fishing industry, has been able to adapt to many things, whether that be regulations, whether that be climate change, whether that be the market. a warming ocean, trying to deal with outdated science, high permit costs, trying to keep up with both state and federal regulations. I just think oftentimes fishermen are already, doing a full-time job, going out to sea and providing for their families and for their communities, that it often is a benefit for them to, connect with members of the staff at the Fishermen's Alliance so that they can stay apprised of what's going on the state and federal level, because they already have a lot of challenges that they're facing, and we just want to help, support them as much as we can, especially in a changing ocean environment where, species are responding to warming in different ways, and how can we best support our current generation of fishermen, but also the future generation of young men and women who want to get into the industry.
Right now, as I touched on before, there is some reported oxygenation issues in Cape Cod Bay, where the oxygen doesn't dissolve as effectively into the water, and it can make it difficult for some marine species to breathe, especially lobster. Now, that has also been tied to changing water temperatures. Do you mind elaborating a bit more on this issue for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that kind of really became prevalent and noticeable in 2019. So since then, the state, the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries, has been working with commercial fishermen to monitor dissolved oxygen levels in Cape Cod Bay. And so what they've been doing is they've been giving fishermen these oxygen sensors, to try to better track what's going on. And they actually have this great map on their website that allows them, fishermen, before they even leave the dock, to know where different low oxygen levels may be in Cape Cod Bay. And so they do this kind of stoplight approach of red, yellow and green, whether you're good to go, you should be concerned, or stay out of that area. But for people who don't really know what dissolved oxygen means, that really, is a measure of how much oxygen is present in the water. And so, of course, we know that lobsters and fish use oxygen to breathe. And when these levels get low, species are stressed and they're going to move out of areas. But if they're trapped in a lobster pot, for example, in these low oxygen areas, they can create die-off. And so often, as you had highlighted, warming waters can really cause these enormous steep temperature and density gradients in the water column. And so then this can really create issues. And while storms can help surface water kind of mix and help regenerate oxygen levels, there can be algal blooms, when there's warmer temperatures, and that can really cause this hypoxic conditions. And so that's something that many lobstermen are concerned about, and just trying to understand the impacts of fertilizers on our lawn and the runoff after storms that go into Cape Cod Bay, or what other drivers with increasing, temperatures in the ocean can really impact the survivability of certain species, and where are they going, and, how can we make sure that fishermen believe in science and can partner with scientists to better understand the resource and how to link the two together.
We're about coming up on time. I also wanted to ask as well, Aubrey, just while we still have you, do you mind highlighting a little bit more? Recently, we got $500,000, a lot more than just $500 for the in the 2024 fiscal budget earmarked for you guys. A lot of that was thanks to State Representative Dylan Fernandez. And so I just wanted to ask for people who might have missed that original story up on CapeCod.com how that money is going to be utilized, and talk a little bit more about some of the resources, services you guys provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really grateful for Representative Fernandez for the earmark. That was part of a $1.2 million package that was secured for the Cape and Islands. So we received $500,000, and those funds will be used to kind of improve fishery resource surveys. So we really believe in collaborative research and using industry-based surveys as platforms, not just scientific vessels. We really want to expand data collection on fishing vessels, so using more collaborative research funds, working on workforce development. So we really believe in training the next generation of young men and women into the fishing industry. And we want to make sure that we're advancing policies and having strong science. In order to have good policy decisions, it needs to be based on sound science. And so really working with the Cape fishermen to make sure that their voices are being heard, and that they are able to partner with fishery managers and scientists for a better outcome for the Cape. And so that's something that we're really grateful for.
All right, and last question as well for Mark before we wrap up. But a lot of this conversation, a lot of this money as well has been earmarked for things involving fishermen getting involved with scientists, essentially. Citizen science is what we've been talking about with Mass Audubon as of late as well. When you first got into the industry, did you anticipate that you'd be involved so much in research, science, development in general, helping to shape the future for the industry at large?
No, I could not. I I never saw that coming back in 1975. So, but as the years went by and the fisheries started having some issues with low stock assessments and some fishermen having to get out of the business and so on and so forth, it obviously became necessary that we take a better look at just what the ocean is all about and how things run, and that's as a fisherman's viewpoint. But I'm sure, but working with the scientists has been very beneficial, I think, for both the fishermen and the scientists, and the general public is going to reap the benefits down the road. I think, obviously, I definitely believe that global warming is a real thing and needs to be examined, and then the impact of it needs to be examined on what's going on in the ocean, whether it's be the hypoxic conditions in Cape Cod Bay, or now there's been talk that the fish. I always hear everybody I talk to, the lobster's moving north, and I said I'm not sure. We had a pretty good year, so I hadn't really noticed anything different. I know, oddly enough, I know some guys down in the Westport area and Fairhaven area, lobstermen who had some pretty good years the last few years. So a lot has to be learned, but it's very good that we have a collaboration with science and the fishermen working together and building a certain amount of trust with each other, so that we can find some real solutions to keep the ocean vibrant and hopefully rebuild our resources even more. Because really, got a huge ocean out there. It could feed the whole world if it's properly managed. So,
yeah, and I just feel like our fisheries here on Cape Cod, for our listeners, they support such a strong economy, and they provide a delicious, healthy, local source of food. And, I think fishing and shellfishing are both integral to Cape Cod, and they've really facilitated the growth of our communities. And I think it's important for all of us to remember that if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have Cape Cod as we know it. And so it's always important to think about supporting our fisheries here on the Cape and making sure that our towns are aware of the importance of working waterfronts and making sure that we're resilient into the future.
All right, awesome. Mark, Aubrey, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Grady Gillane in the CapeCod.com News Center, and thank you for listening to Sunday Journal.